The Reverend Dr. Andy O'Neill is one of a team in ministry at St. Paul's United in Riverview, New Brunswick. He is married to Jenny and is daddy to Jonathan and Margaret. I now invite him to share his story of faith with us.
My sister Kylie is a doctor, and she assures me that a human being can manage any level of pain as long as they know when it's going to be over. Apparently, I have about 10 minutes, just so that you know. Thank you for your patience in welcoming me again to this discussion. As we were talking here, one of the words that kept coming back to me was family when we talk about our story of faith. And we know that family binds us together. Sometimes our familiarity breeds contempt. But at the heart of it, faith holds us together. Our cherished beliefs, our challenges that are spoken to us, our turning points in life, these form our stories of faith. My stories of faith are what I would call faith in spite of myself. God knocking at the door despite my not listening. I want to start with a story that actually has absolutely nothing to do with faith. A plane was flying over the Atlantic. You've probably heard this before. Both engines go out. The pilot comes back, tells the 5 passengers on board the plane is going to go down. There are 5 parachutes on it. He grabs one and takes off. 5 people left, 4 parachutes, a couple of minutes. First passenger jumps up and says, well, I am the head of the World Bank. If I don't get off this plane, there are global financial systems that are going to crash as of tomorrow. So he grabs one and jumps off. Another passenger stands up and she says, I am days away from closing in on a cure to some forms of cancer. If I don't get off this plane, that will be lost. So she grabs a parachute and jumps off. There are 3 people left: a father, his son, and an economist. The economist simply says, I am the smartest man in the world. And he grabs a parachute and jumps off. No other reasoning required. The father turns to his son and he says, you have so much life ahead of you. I have lived a good and full life. I've accomplished many things that I wanted to accomplish. You take this last parachute. His son looks at his father adoringly and says, Dad, that is in keeping with you. It is so generous. You have offered a gift, but you have nothing to fear. The smartest man in the world just grabbed my knapsack. My father is an economist, and I have always appreciated that story for 2 reasons. 1, I look up to him, and 2, he tells that story and enjoys it when people laugh. I also share that with you because for a long time I wanted to be like my father. Maybe even I wanted to be my father, as so many boys do. I tried economics, and as Dad would say, there were push factors and pull factors about my experience. The push factor away from economics was that I had absolutely no talent for it, quite simply. The pull factor was that there was something else that I was seeking. In German, there's a word, Sehnsucht, and it's the condition of longing. There was a longing in me, and I wasn't sure for what. I knew it wasn't economics. I decided to test my call with some people I trusted. But this was at a very sensitive time in my life. I think it happens to all of us. Was there a time when you finally saw some of the frailty of your heroes? where you saw some of the fragility and humanity of people that you idolized and cherished. The people we cherish can never live up to or sustain the virtue that we invest in them. That was where I was in third year of economics. There was one person that I could speak to who was a great listener and a deep thinker. That was Father Gary Thorne, who was the rector of St. George's Round Church in Halifax. He and I had a couple of conversations about what this longing was. He refrained from calling it a call. But I said to him one time, I feel like maybe I'm called into ministry, but because of some disillusionment that was happening in my life with my own church, and because of the very positive experience I was having in his church, I didn't know in which denomination. So I let it all out for him and laid it there for him to give me an answer. The only thing I remember him saying was, "You don't leave a church because it has problems. You don't leave because it has problems." And I moved in that moment of faith from judgment to humility about my family of faith. Families are all different. People who are members of families, they're very different, and yet we are bound by something. When I was working at St. Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh, I asked the minister a couple of questions because I didn't really understand his family as well as I understood my own. I asked him one time, why do we persist in this urban cathedral setting in these modern times? Why do we persist in reading the King James Version of the Bible? He looked at me and probably with a great deal of patience for this young colonial. He looked at me and pointed up to the ceiling at one of the crossbeams in the ceiling of this great cathedral to a royal insignia. And he said, "King James was a member of the congregation." I started to understand his family a little bit better. The other question that I asked him that I remember his response to, because we had lots of great conversations, was about the Apostles' Creed. In that liturgy, the congregation would recite the Apostles' Creed immediately following the sermon, but prior to the celebration of communion. And everyone would stand and recite the Apostles' Creed. And I asked him, in this day and age, in this urban cathedral setting, can you really recite all those articles of faith? Can all of the people sitting in the congregation recite each article and truly believe each article? And he said, no. But that's not the point. See, for some people in the pews, they will have a real attachment to part of that creed. That will really resonate with them. And then there will be other people sitting right next to them for whom that really doesn't do anything and they're very unsure about it, but another part of the creed really does something for them. He said creeds are not about personal opinions or being able to agree to everything that is written. They are about holding our faith together, supporting each other in our faith and our doubt. And I moved from unanimity to community. If you believe that we don't have a creed, try bringing a plastic bottle of water into this arena. We too are creedal people. This is the last one. On October 27th, 2004, a very important event in my life occurred and in the life of millions. After almost 100 years, baseball's Boston Red Sox won the World Series. with that final pitch at about 12:30 a.m. and a casual toss to first, the world's, well, maybe some of us in the world celebrated. It was about 4:30 in Edinburgh, so our celebrations were quiet. The commemorative video that I ordered after that and watched as soon as I received was called Faith Rewarded. Obviously speaking about the beleaguered fans of the Boston Red Sox and how long they had waited for this, but that their faith had a reward. I'm less certain about that concept in our faith. I'm less certain about being certain. But something excites me about our faith. There are signs that give me hope. Our son Jonathan has been going to church, well, since before he was born, actually. That is the lot of a PK. He's comfortable in church, but he's also a bit shy. He doesn't always feel like being admired and looked at and spoken to by hundreds of people on Sunday morning. Maybe some of you have that feeling too. I'm uncertain what the next 10 or 20 years hold for the church. I'm uncertain what is in store for him on his faith journey, whether he'll continue in faith or, as I did, leave the church for a while, maybe to return, maybe not. I'm his father, but I can't direct what his future will be. One Sunday when everything seemed to be going wrong in worship, and you've had that feeling too, I know. The papers fall to the ground. You announce the wrong hymn. You forget to announce the money that was raised on Saturday. And all the anxiety creeps in gradually. As was his habit, Jonathan came up and sat with me just before the children's time, and we always sing the same refrain, "There is room for all." And for the first time, and he was probably about 3.5, for the first time, I heard Jonathan sing. This boy who doesn't like attention, who doesn't want to be center stage in front of all those adults, he sang. And it was the sweetest sound. He didn't know all the words. He probably doesn't even know what they mean, all of them. And yes, you can say that because he had been coming to church, it was a familiar, maybe even habitual act. But what a habit. What a habit we share as a family of faith, that people of all ages gather and sing and pray and doubt and confess and hear and weep and rejoice and hear in each other's voices the stories of our faith.